Welcome to Inside Design with Kandrak and Cole, hosted by two nationally published Atlanta interior designers, Joanne Kandrak and Kelly Cole. These energetic women are also world travelers, charity givers, and bloggers with a wealth of information to share and stories to tell about the interior design world. Okay, now just a warning, this is going to be fun and not too serious. After all, they still do have an interior design business running at full speed.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 123 of Inside Design with Kandrak and Cole. This is Joanne Kandrak, and today we have a guest, Beau White, who is an entrepreneur, an author, and chairman of the board of Summer Classics, Gabby and Wendy Jane. Beau has quite a story to tell. In 2013, he was named Entrepreneur of the Year by the Society of International Business Fellows, and in 2021, he received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the International Casual Furnishings Association. He graduated from Auburn in 1972 with a degree in textile engineering. Now, the phrase outdoor living had hardly been a thing, as outdoor furniture was simply known as a table and chairs you would find on a basic patio deck. At just 28 years old, Beau left his job at his family-owned business, Avondale Mills, and started a sales representative company in 1978 called Vista Corporation, specializing in selling outdoor furniture. In 87, he started multiple companies in an effort to expand from selling on the road to building a national brand. One of these companies was Summer Classics, basically our favorite outdoor brand, which was created around Beau's thought of designing and manufacturing products that he would want for his own backyard.
So, with a business model of creating products that were consumer-driven, would stand the test of time, it would not go out of style, Summer Classics officially took off in 1987. Beau is also the subject of the well-received biography, A Summer Classic, The Beau White Story by Christopher Totten. Before we get started talking to Beau, let's welcome our first sponsor for 2022, which is Sherwin-Williams.
So if you're looking for an exceptional finish, interior designers prefer the Interior Emerald Design Edition paint by Sherwin-Williams. This came out 6 or 8 months ago.
Yep.
It combines the luxury of a smooth, uniform finish with our best hide yet. It comes in 200 colors. They're brighter, cleaner whites, exclusive to the select paint lines. The finest interior paint and primer in one is a perfect choice for giving walls a flawless appearance. So for more information, visit sherwinwilliams.com or visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store.
All right. Our first episode of 2022.
Yes, well,
Here we
welcome
go.
you. So you have a very impressive resume. So what led you to want to tell the story of your life? And how did you connect with this Christopher Totten to write this book?
Well,
Really?
I almost died. It's actually the way it came about. So I had traveled to China a lot, 29 times, and I had a blood clot issue, and I had blood clots, 5 blood clots in my lungs. One can kill you, and I found out later that you get a blood clot to your brain, your heart, your liver, your kidney, or your lungs, you can die. I was like, well, these things are dangerous. And so I actually had an event where I was not 90% or 70% sure I was dead. I have 100% sure I was dead. So you get a signal to your brain that you're going to die, you're in this. And I got that. I happened to be in the hospital at the time, fortunately. And they filled me full of dopamine and salt water, and I came back, and I was like, I'm not supposed to be here. I don't understand why I'm alive. And I got a signal that said, you need to finish the book, write the book. I said, okay, well, I don't know how to write, right? But
was the book already started when all that happened?
I had because of the recession. That's a good question. That's a great question, in fact, because in 2008, after the Great Recession, and we had grown, we had doubled every 3.5 years since I started the business in 87. So one of my friends came to me and said, you got to write a book about this. This kind of stuff doesn't happen to people, that not the growth, but the situation I had with Royal Bank of Scotland, where I was growing, and they had come to me and said, we can give you as much money as you need. I was like, okay, wow, this is like heaven for me. Because I never could catch up with demand. And so they got in trouble. Royal Bank of Scotland lost $63 billion. This is the largest loss in corporate history in the fourth quarter of 2008. And they had nowhere to get money. Yeah, I know a lot of people don't. There's some books about it. Fortunately, the Bank of England took them over, and they deknighted the CEO of Royal Bank of Scotland. And so anyway, they started, the only place they could get money was to go back to their clients and try to get them to move their loans. So I got caught in that, and I was like, hey, this is crazy. And so I started working on the book back then, but then when I had this event, I was like, I've got to finish this thing. And I'd written like a few chapters. I wrote like 13 chapters, and I was like, these are terrible. So I got to get somebody to help me. I read back through. I was like, well, I got a couple of good ones, but the rest of them were terrible. So I started interviewing people to write chapters, and I would pay them so much to write a chapter, or usually they would only write a few paragraphs. But I finally hit it. This guy had just gotten out of seminary, and he could spend a year with me, and so we worked on it together. His father was an author, and he said he would work with him on it. So that's how I got him.
Wow, that's amazing. So Summer Classics is definitely our favorite outdoor furniture line. We've bought a ton of it.
Yep. I've got it at home.
So what do you owe to the success of that business?
Did y'all go to Harvard? You sound like you're really smart.
We are.
Yeah. Well, I started like 12 different companies because I wanted to get off the road. I was a sales rep, and I wanted to get off the road. And finally, I started Summer Classics, and I was selling outdoor furniture, so it made sense that it would work. But you said I was Vista Corporation before, so the person answering our phone was answering Vista Corporation, and one day she came in my office and said, hey, Mr. White, every time I answer the phone, Vista Corporation, or almost every time, they say, is this Summer Classics? And I said, okay, well, when you go back to your desk, answer the phone Summer Classics. And I was like, all right, we're gonna get rid of all this other stuff. I was in the wicker business, the mirror business, lamp business. I was in all these other businesses. So I closed those down and just concentrated on that. And that's and the story of how I got the name for Summer Classic. Would you like to hear that? That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, tell us.
So have you ever heard the Steve Jobs story about Xerox, about the Xerox lab in California that he went in and looked around and saw all this cool inventions they were working on they weren't doing anything with. And he saw the mouse, and he went back to his office and looked to see if there was a patent on this mouse, and there wasn't. So he took that idea and basically stole it. So that's a similar story to what I'm going to tell you about Summer Classic. So I'm in Spartanburg, South Carolina, calling on one of my accounts, and I'm going in where he has his outdoor furniture, and he's got these Adirondack chairs. This is back in '87. And he's got this name Summer Classics on them. And I went, wow, that is so cool. And he comes down and says, I said, like, who's this? Who's Summer Classics? He says, well, that's me. I was like, you? What do you mean? Retailers don't start brands. And so he said, well, I just thought it was a cool name. And I got this guy up here making these things and painting them for me. And I was like, wow, it's a very cool name. So there was no internet back then. And there probably were fax machines. That was about it. And so I go back to my office. I'm like, I can't quit thinking about this. And so I called up my father's attorney. I said, how do you get a trademark? And he says, well, I don't do it, but we have a lawyer here that does that. So I called him. He said, I got this idea for Summer Classics for a brand. He said, well, how'd you get that? And so I told him the story. He said, well, you can't have that. And I was like, why? He said, well, that's called first use. If that guy had it first, you can't have it. I said, is there some way I can get it? He said, well, if you ask him to give it to you, and he does, yeah, you can have it. So I said, well, do me a favor, check on it. And I don't want to ask him if it already has, somebody else already has it. So, and back then you had to do everything by mail. And it took, months to try to figure out if you got a trademark or not. So he came back to me about 6 months later and said, you can get it. I said, okay, let me call him. So I called the guy and Curtis, hey, what are you doing with that Summer Classics thing? He said, well, nothing. The guy went out of business. I'm not doing anything with it. I said, can I have it? He said, yeah. He says, well, will you sign something? Yes. So that's how I came up with it.
That's crazy.
I would love to think I had this cool idea for the name, but that's the name. Then I said, okay, I'm going to make a products that don't go out of style, because the styles kept changing. And I was like, and one, and two, I'm going to make it last so long that this probably won't work for 15 years or so, because the way I'm going to grow it is people got to start talking about it and saying, man, I've had this stuff for 15 or 20 years and it still looks like new. And that was the idea of the whole thing. So
it's funny that you say that, because we were just talking about on a podcast, probably one of the last few ones, and Kelly was talking about her summer classics that she has on her outdoor porch, and that you've had it for how long, and it's just like the day you got it.
It is going on 6 or 7 years, completely exposed to the elements, and I don't even bring my cushions in. I mean,
that's crazy.
I know.
Good for you. Yeah, we've got those. Cushions. People don't even realize that you can buy a cushion that doesn't get wet. I don't know if you've got Dream cushions, but
I did. Of course, I did. Yeah. I mean, I'll have to recover them at some point. I didn't. Yeah. I wasn't a good girl with my Sunbrella fabric, vacuuming it and keeping it really clean. But the cushions themselves they drain, and they are still really comfortable and plump, and yeah. So I figured, it's kind of like the Maytag washer dryers, you know. You exactly. You like, do they have repairmen? They don't need them. But I think we noticed and started buying summer classics a long time ago because of the classic styles, because it was lasting so long, and we have such a demand for it, especially here in Georgia with our outdoor living being 10 months out of the year. But there's such a huge expanse of outdoor offerings now that where the quality is just there's such a range. I mean, you can buy it on Wayfair, on Overstock, in Target, and it's not that we're not talking apples to apples, you know, there. So
so let me so you had these blood clots, and you came out of it, and you were like, what was going through your mind? Were you like, okay, I need to do this and this?
I always wonder, like, when people write a book, is it therapy? Is it cathartic? Are you trying to share something? Is it you had a revelation? Is it, did you just want your customers to know you better? Or, what was the takeaways?
Or what heritage purposes, really for my family. Really. The original idea was so that my grandchildren's grandchildren would understand how this all got here. Hopefully they'll still keep the business that long. And then how difficult it was to get there. I think a lot of people think it's easy, but it's not. I mean, y'all know that. I mean, you certainly know that if you have your own business. I mean, and being an entrepreneur has if you don't have certain characteristics, you can't even do it. I mean, I read this book recently that described an entrepreneur, and it had the 6 traits in there, which are visionary, passionate, driven, risk taker. Risk taker is a big one because a lot of people are just not willing to take risks. Responsible and problem solver. So if you don't have those 6 characteristics, it's very difficult.
What was the last one?
Problem solving.
So then y'all may have those combined, but you need those to be able to maneuver. I think the risk taker and the driven part are really important ones. Obviously, visionary, you got to see the future.
Yeah, I think you're right. The risk taker is a big one. There's sometimes a lot of entrepreneur groups might be women that don't want to give up their benefits, or there's reasons that they can't take their risks, but
fear is an energizer. It really is. Yeah. So people might not realize that Gabby Home and Summer Classics are under the same umbrella.
And Wendy Jane.
So we're also huge fans of Gabby from the very beginning. When Gabby we were just ordering lighting. I think we were just tiny. So how did Gabby Home come to be?
That's great. That's a great question. So I got fascinated with one of my retail stores or dealers And I ended up buying it. And the reason I was fascinated is he was importing from all over the world and mixing it in with his outdoor furniture. And he was a garden center, but he sold furniture on the inside. And that's like, I love the way you're doing this mix. And I really feel like we need to get into indoor. And so I bought his company. And then that got my son William interested in coming into the company, which was probably the best thing that happened to us. And he said, I'm interested in that. I want to do it. And then so he came in and we started working on it together. And he said, I really don't think we should call it Summer Classics Home, which is what I was going to call it. I think let's come up with a name. So he started working on it, and he came up with all these kind of cool French names. And then he decided on Gabby. I said, well, wow, that's good. My mother's name's Gabriella. I said, well, that's a perfect tie-in. And so that's how he came up with it. And then we started going to China together and working on it. And then the recession hit. And I was like, and that was scary. That was, I don't know if you remember that. That was a very scary time between 2008.
Oh, yeah. We were in business
We were in business then, yep.
Yeah. So 2008 to 2010, you're like biting your fingernails off and not sleeping. I was like, I didn't need an amphetamine to stay awake. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
That period of time. Yeah. So it was.
Well, your offerings for Gabby have really expanded. I mean,
yes.
The new showroom in High Point is
the new showroom. It's really my favorite. One of my favorite showrooms in High Point.
It really is,
and there's a lot of them. Yeah, we have really, yeah. It really is
incredible.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So the showroom came about because we bought Stanford Furniture, and they owned that showroom. I don't know if you know this story.
Yes.
Yep.
And so it was Stanford Furniture was kind of this line that had been around a long time, and it's kind of stodgy. And we're like, we needed. We were buying upholstery outside, and we're like, we need our own upholstery line. So we bought that, and then we kind of took all the walls and ceilings out of that building. And we went, wow, this is kind of a cool building. We can really make this into something. And then added a bunch of natural light in, and the
brick, the floor, it's
everything just took
really
off.
Cool.
So it just really made a big difference, and it made Gabby's show. And then we sold $4 million in one show. I was like, I didn't even know that was possible. And so I was
we love the showroom with all the aviaries in the window and everything at the last High Point. That was so beautiful. And the outdoor, I mean, really, we're using, it seems like with the expansion of performance fabrics and everybody putting a lot of
emphasis on outdoor,
but living in their homes through the pandemic and really being hard on their homes. I mean, we're putting a lot of outdoor in, and it's funny, when we were at Summer Classics in High Point, we were talking about how it was so pretty.
You could almost use it inside.
I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, especially for vacation rentals, and I mean, you might as well just put the outdoor on the inside and call it a day.
Yeah, so I think that it's interesting you say that, because when people, we have stores, and when people come to the store, what do you think the most asked question is? It's where is your outdoor furniture? And we'll go like, well, this is it. This is outdoor furniture.
That's a great compliment. Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. Yeah,
exactly what we like to have happen. A great story about that aviary. So we had, so for your listeners who don't know, we had a whole window set up with birds in it. And I had interviewed a guy that's now in charge of the showrooms and the way that things look, really, basically.
He's amazing.
Yeah, Chris. And I started interviewing, I had just come back from hunting, and he's like, oh, I love birds. And I was like, really? And he starts talking about his birds. It turns out he had 1,500 birds. I was like, what?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And I was like, what kind of birds? And he's like, well, I've got turkeys, quail, ducks. It's just like on and on and on. I was like, wow, I don't think I've ever, where do you put them? And he has this huge area that has like a tent, the see-through tent. It's just, I'm like, you're amazing. So
that was a beautiful display.
Yeah, he sold his birds, and then he got back into the business in the last couple of years, where he
because those were his birds.
Yeah, they were his birds.
Those were his birds, yeah.
Yeah,
to come get them.
That's amazing. Yeah, he does a great job merchandising and making the showroom look totally amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So after you've done a lot, you've really seen a lot, traveled a lot. What do you think, since we're talking about 2022 and a fresh take on the year, what do you think it takes to live a successful life?
Well, that's a big question. I think relationships are probably, certainly my relationship with my wife has been the most important thing about.
That's so nice to hear.
How long have you been married?
It'll be 50 years in July, so long time.
What?
Wow.
Did you say 50?
5-0?
That's amazing. They got married when they were 5.
I thought 15. I thought maybe 15. It's like, well, that's not that long. All right, 50. Wow.
Wow, I'm at 30 and I was impressed with myself. Now that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's over the
top.
Well,
I think you're right. I think relationships are what it's all about in the end. And there's all these quotes and there's all these different things but it's so true. In the end, that's really all that matters. I
think if you think about it, that's why we've been so successful for 16 years is because of the relationships that we have, the one that we have together especially, but the ones that we have all throughout our industry. Yeah. And with our reps, Paul Bentley is our rep for, the Atlanta area. And he's just such a good rep. He is. He does a good job for us. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. That really helps.
We got him out of college. Has he ever tell you the story? He needs to tell you the story of his first day on the job. I had him
give us some scoop
here. Yeah.
Go ahead, tell us.
Cut the grass. Yeah. Okay, so we're having the sales meeting, and I said to him, we have this thing called whatever it takes here. I said, do you want to do something like a whatever it takes moment? And he's like, yeah, man, I'm good. I said, go get the lawnmower out of the back of the building and cut the grass right there. So he had some shorts in his car and he's out there in his loafers cutting the grass with his black socks. I get him to tell you that story. It's a great story. And then the other reps, the bus with the other reps pulls around the corner and they see him and they ask the VP is with them. Who's that? And he says, that's our new rep there.
Well,
hey, whatever it takes.
Hey, that's the kind of attitude we want in all of our employees.
25 years ago, I think. That was a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, I love that you said too, because, we're a little older as well. Like nothing comes easily, a lot of hard work, a lot of mistakes. And I think as young people
I've got an MBA in those mistakes. I have an MBA in mistakes. I'm working on my PhD. Sorry.
So to the younger folks, people just starting out, what is some career advice you would give?
I'd say that pushing through, like that mistake thing. And I made a $30 million mistake one time. And I was like,
oh boy.
And my staff was coming to me like, we're going to go out of business. I'm like, no, we're not. Here's what we're going to do. I've thought through this. We're going to work through it and we'll get through that. And it's going to take 5 years to recover. It took more than 5 years, but we got through it. And I was like,
I think it's risk, yeah.
A lot of people call it grit. It's like when you have an issue, when you have a problem, and we're all going to have problems, then you kind of look at it like, okay, God threw this at me and I've got to figure it out. Sometimes it's so big you can't figure it out yourself. So you're just praying and to figure out how am I going to make this work? And you push through, but it does take an incredible amount of grit to push through situations which could, for some people, would give up. Here's a great story about giving up. So I had made $41,000 a year for 10 years. I'm going to my wife going, I can't do this. This is crazy. I was making $250,000 a year before I did this, and I can't seem to break through here. And she's like, you can do it. I believe in you. I was like, okay. And I just go back in the grind. And I finally it turned, just the volume caught up with the profit, I guess is what I would call it, where you have your break even. I'm sure y'all know this in your business. So you have your break even.
Well, Kelly and I talk about the seeds. You plant the seeds.
Yes.
And there were seeds that we planted maybe 8 or 9 years ago that maybe have come to fruition today. Mm-hmm. So you're constantly, planting those little seeds and then they come back. But
we've missed many a paycheck.
Yes.
And we've also had good times as well. And so I'm glad we had those hard times, because when we have the good times, I don't feel guilty.
Yes. Yes.
And I appreciate it very much.
Yeah. And the mistakes. Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, I remember her talking about her father was an attorney and she has a brother, and they would be at the dinner table and the father would ask, what mistake did you make today? And he's like, if you didn't make a mistake, you didn't learn something today. So he kind of like embellished the mistakes, because that means then that you have learned something. So
Yeah.
I think that's good advice.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well,
definitely. And regroup is the key is don't make them again.
Exactly.
Or try not to make them again. I say it that way, because you're going to make them again probably.
Well, we love to celebrate entrepreneurs, and you have done such an amazing job with your companies, and we're obviously big fans. And so for all of our interior designer audience out there, if you don't buy from Gabby and you don't buy from Summer Classics, you definitely need to approach them and go to High Point and set up an account. And for our other listeners, these are the kind of products that we support.
Yeah, and I love too when you're online, the stock is given, these days with all the craziness. So if something is not in stock, I'm usually going to pass off. But if I know that it is, and it's in pretty much real time, that's a huge, huge deal for us.
Yeah.
When we're trying
that's
to
made a
source.
huge difference. And, our business model is so different. The typical business model, our competition lives within a box. I think a lot of people have been complaining about Sunbrella, but Sunbrella lives in a box. So their box is their manufacturing plant. And unless you add staff, another shift, additional equipment, or say, I'm going to really make an investment, I'm going to build another box, I'm going to add on to this box and add equipment on, you can't increase your volume. So what happens?
Yeah, I think it's tricky. Yeah, it's tricky because if they go ahead and invest in all that and then things slow down, where are you going to be? So you either have to go all in,
you got to jump in,
go in, or you're out.
That's the risk taker thing. Yeah. So they've got to say, it's, when I got in the textile business in 1972, I get to New York and we're sold out for 2 years, and I'm going to the office of and I'm a salesman. I'm getting like chomping at the bit to sell. And as the guy says, well, it's a little different now. We're on allotment. I was like, well, what's allotment? He says, well, that's where we tell customers how much they can get. I was like, well, that doesn't sound like selling to me. And he's like, well, it's not. In fact, they're taking us out to lunch now. And I think we're kind of getting in that situation. So that's why these upholstery factories are going, their lead times are going out, because they can't, first of all, you can't get people. So if you wanted to increase capacity, you can't get enough people to do it. And then you've got to decide you want to make an investment to increase the size of your plant. But you've got to get the people to come in there, so it's a big decision. It's that risk taker, back to the risk taker profile.
Well, it's kind of like you and I, Joanne, when we looked at each other that one day and we said, we're only two human beings with X amount of hours in a day. We'll never, get to that gross income goal that we want until we hire people. So that was when we started to grow our staff, because we just... we're only two people and we couldn't make it bigger. So
it'd be great if somehow, North Carolina, I know a lot of these factories and stuff are in rural areas, but if they could just recruit people who maybe instead of going to college, let's learn a trade, let's learn upholstery, let's learn, wood, that could be a good partnership.
Throughout the country, I think
they are doing it.
Trade education should be glorified more than it is.
Yeah.
Oh,
I hate that our time is up. It goes so fast. It was such a great conversation with you. It's nice to finally, talk to you, because we'll be in High Point again. Actually, we'll see Gabby at the America Smart Show.
Yep. And
next week, I think.
Yeah, next week. Yeah. Well, hang on, because we end every podcast with a funny and a serious quote. So I did the funny one last time.
Okay. I'm opening a gym called Resolutions. For the first 2 weeks, it will have exercise equipment. Then convert to a bar with yoga pants as the dress code.
And I'll be there. Excellent.
Just like the bars that there's a bar called the Library on a college campus. You tell your parents, I'm going to the library.
Sure. All right, here's our serious quote. Anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or 80. Anyone who keeps learning stays young. The greatest thing in life is to keep your mind young. And that's from Henry Ford.
That is so true.
So true. That's us. We're in our 20s still.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Well, thanks to Sherwin-Williams for sponsoring this podcast. And for those of you who have not yet, please rate and review us. We really count on those reviews. They help other people find us. And thank you, Bew, for being such a wonderful guest.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.
Join Joanne and Kelly weekly for a lively conversation about trends, travels to industry events, current design projects, the good, the bad, and the ugly, do's and don'ts, product recommendations, and more. Be sure to follow the fun on Facebook. They're on Instagram at Kandrak Cole. And of course, you've got to visit them online at kandrak-cole.com for more information.